So, red flags everywhere. What's up guys, it's Spark and welcome to today's video. And I've been away for a little bit a while, and the clear reason for that is because I now actually have a wardrobe. And as you can see, I've also got a shelf up there as well. So a little bit of time doing up my room, but we are back with another video. Today, I've just got off the back of watching the qualifying for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, and I feel like we were kind of robbed. We got into practice, and it just shows how powerful that toe is across the track, because I think, well, Crofty put it was one half Monza, one half Monaco. The real Monza part is when that toe comes in off the back straight, it gets you about 5 or 6 tenths, and that made for a very unpredictable qualifying. So, once again, we now have Charles Leclerc on the podium, while the two championship rivals, Hamilton P2 and Verstappen in P3. So for those of you who have watched my reviews in the past, and well, you know the drill by now, I'm going to reel off from the top, being from Mercedes, and the bottom at Williams, based in order in which they finished last year. In my analytics, I noticed that around 65% of you aren't yet subscribed to the channel. So what are you doing with your lives, guys? Go on, hit that subscribe button. It'll be lovely to have you around as part of the community, and hit that bell icon as well to be notified of future videos. And also, let me know what kind of content you would love to see. I mean, I tend to do racing reviews, well, more qualifying reviews, race reviews when I get the time. I tend to post my highlights from my league racing in terms of gaming, but if there's any particular challenges or anything you want to see, particularly with the upcoming Formula 1 2021 game, which I've already pre-ordered, so be sure to let me know what you think about that in the comment section below. I'd be loving to hear your thoughts about it. So without further ado, let's crack on. Now, for Mercedes qualifying, of what you saw from about FP2 or FP3, you would not think that Hamilton would be up in P2 at the moment, but he is. But unfortunately, Hamilton's P2 was Bottas's loss, as unfortunately the red flag came out, and that put any chance of him being able to capitalise off the toe, with him ending up in P10, unfortunately. So, while people may be quick to jump on the kind of Bottas is too slow memes, he was yet again a victim of the team's strategy, so not only down to bad driving on his part. Lewis Hamilton, after the struggles that they had in FP3, where they looked about a second or so off the pace, it was very, very lucky and very, very good turnaround to be in P2, which I believe he actually changed his setup prior to Parc Fermé to actually set it up better for the race, so he could be in a real position here to sort of like limit the damage after we would have taken from Monaco, which was by all sense a disastrous race for the Mercedes team. Well, at least in Mercedes' case, hopefully the wheels will come off this time, but in the best way possible. In Red Bull's case, another story of what could have been. Verstappen last time needed to take the pole in Monaco, but he was gifted when Charles Leclerc eventually didn't even start the race. Today will probably be just a little bit more painful, because it doesn't look like Leclerc's gearbox is going to be in trouble. So it's a P3 start for Max Verstappen, because he's now behind his championship rival Lewis Hamilton. Nevertheless, around the first and second sectors of the lap, Red Bull still looked to be the fastest, while Ferrari a very close second. While Max Verstappen in P3 now, and kind of at the expense of his teammate. I think this was the time where Sergio, in the second phase of Q3, would have had the toe to get further up the grid. Unfortunately, he didn't have it because of the red flag with Yuki Tsunoda's crash. So, like Bottas, Perez's grid position was more or less at the expense of their teammates, who are both fighting for the title at the moment. So, unfortunately, this is not the session that Red Bull needed. They needed to be much higher, particularly now with Lewis Hamilton being in second place. However, anything can happen with this Baku Grand Prix, with 2017-2018 races being, without doubt, the best sort of races, I feel, in recent memory. So, not over yet for Red Bull. With McLaren, now, at the time of filming this, I'm not sure whether Lando Norris will be receiving a penalty or not, so I could probably release this video in this little age poorly, so just going to roll my gut here. It's a very familiar story, I think, with McLaren, but it looked in practice as Daniel Ricciardo was making eventual progress to get that McLaren further up the grid. I have no doubt tomorrow's race will be all sorts of chaos, so there's a lot of opportunity for Daniel Ricciardo to put his way back up the grid. In Lando Norris's case, it was yet another strong qualifying from him, but the only chip on his shoulder is going to be that supposed red flag infringement. I think it was the end of either Q1 or Q2, where it looked as if on the camera shot that he was unsure whether to go into the pits or not, so I think the speed in which he was travelling is probably that point under investigation. P6 is still a very encouraging performance, but it looks like in terms of the championship battle with Ferrari, that on these street tracks, Ferrari are just leagues ahead of the Woking-based team. Yet another tale of what could have been for Aston Martin, and Vettel at the moment really finding his form on these street circuits, missing out on Q2 by about half a tenth, which was absolutely gutting for the four-time world champion. It looks like really to be getting his foot on the ground with the Aston Martin car. This is, again, this is much more encouraging from him. I think he had the pace to get into Q3, but a lot of the drivers were caught up by the red flag from Daniel Ricciardo's crash, Vettel being one of them. Nevertheless, but the first casualty in the whole of qualifying, unfortunately, was Lance Stroll, who was the first victim on qualifying of the turn 15, which apparently is the bump really going into the braking zone that's really catching these drivers out. I think he will start eventually P19 based on the sort of times I think they're set in practice. So he's ahead of Antonio Giovinazzi, who crashed as well in the main section. So Aston Martin, unlike Monaco, will be left wanting from this qualifying session. Moving on to Alpine, Fernando Alonso put in another brilliant drive. He's up in Q3, out-qualifies Esteban Ocon, who the French drivers seem to be really having the edge over his more experienced Spanish teammate, but this was another race, this was another one of those times where Alonso just kept his head down, and this was a much more encouraging qualifying position from him. I mean, he's starting P9 overall ahead of Valtteri Bottas. I think Alpine are in a very outside chance of points. They've got Fernando Alonso into Q3 at the moment with the Q9, so strong performance there. Now, Esteban Ocon, I think it was very bold in Q1 to not go out again, and it clearly paid off. But unfortunately, it was just those red flag. That red flag just destroyed. As soon as you're locked down after the final session, it just ruined any chance that he had, really, of getting up into Q3. So unfortunately, he was sealed down in P12 with nothing really much to do. Benefit for him, he's got a free choice of tyres, so he'll have a fresher set than the guys in front of him. So watch out for Esteban Ocon going into the race. Now, it's looking like the quick pace that's coming around from Ferrari doesn't seem to be a fluke, particularly not on these street circuits. So once again, another pole position for Charles Leclerc. But like Monaco, it was another sort of lucky one at the moment because of Yuki Tsunoda's crash, and eventually Carlos Sainz is locking up the brakes and then ruining eventually the front wing. Charles Leclerc, I'm not quite sure what Ferrari's race pace were like, but it didn't seem to be all that convincing. So it's just a case of how far Leclerc can actually hold on. I think Ferrari can probably have best help for a podium. The race win is really between Verstappen and Hamilton at this point. And Carlos Sainz will have another chance to score a decent haul of points. Like, he's up in P5 at the moment, out-qualifying his best mate Lando Norris, and both Ferraris out-qualified both the McLarens as well. The momentum for P3 has swung back in Ferrari's favour. It looked to be with McLaren at the early point of the season, but Ferrari are slowly but surely starting to get on top of all the issues that they had. Leclerc has proven himself as effective tier leader, and Carlos Sainz, now he's really gelling to the car, is really proving his worth as well to the team. Things are looking up as part of the Grand Ferrari master plan. The dark horses, I feel, of qualifying were AlphaTauri, and it looked for a minute that Pierre Gasly was actually going to take pole position in Q3. But I'm not really sure what the issue was. Maybe he's too far back from Yuki Tsunoda to properly get the toe. But he went from a 10th up to about 3/10 down in his qualifying lap. So Pierre Gasly, it was yet another strong qualifying from him. More reminiscent of what we saw at the beginning of the year, particularly in Bahrain and Imola. So the AlphaTauri looks to be very, very fast. And this was a much more encouraging qualifying session, I feel, for Yuki Tsunoda. He's into Q3, which is a much needed upgrade from his previous performances. He's in a points paying position to start off with. He just needs to keep it clean, hold his ground, and not bin it into turn 3 like he did in the qualifying. Alfa Romeo, on the other hand, had a session to forget. There's not really much to say about these guys' qualifying session. You had Kimi Räikkönen, who could only manage a best of P14, just ahead of Mr. Saturday, George Russell. And unfortunately, their best chance, I think, as what we've seen of recent races, Antonio Giovinazzi, he unfortunately crashed it at the beginning of Q1 and will start effectively in last place. So there's not really much to expect, I think, from Alfa Romeo going into this race in Baku. As for the Haas cars at the moment, Mick Schumacher, it was another quiet session, I think, for Haas. I think this is one of those tracks when they're looking yet again the slowest on the field, and once again, with Mick Schumacher, unlike what happened in Monaco when he couldn't even start qualifying, he's got the edge over his teammate Nikita Mazepin as well. And Nikita Mazepin, you didn't spin. Great job. So the final team on the list is Williams. It's P15 for Mr. Saturday, George Russell, which I think, given his consistency over qualifying, it's not really a surprise anymore. It's an expectation that he gets into Q2 with the pace that he's got at that Williams. But it still doesn't look to be anywhere near closer to the points than they were at the beginning of the season. So they're just going to be hoping for a little bit of carnage up front and just keeping their noses clean just to make sure they can nab a few points from this race. With Nicholas Latifi, he didn't look anywhere near to have the edge on George Russell in terms of outline pace. The difference between their final times, I believe, was around 0.4 of a second in Q1, which was a massive, massive gap between teammates when you're driving the same car. Unfortunately, it's going to be... The problem these lower teams have, but they just don't have the raw pace as well to be mixing it with the upper teams. They just have to wait for carnage to happen before they can actually score any points, which, as we've seen in 2017, 2018, there's plenty of that happening in Baku. So now with the grid covered, let's reel off some predictions. But here's what I think what's going to happen within the top three. I'll just share them up on the screen now. I think the momentum is with Max Verstappen to take the race win. I just don't like with the Mercedes is they've been very, very smart in getting Lewis back up into P2, but I can't help but feel that throughout the rest of the lap, Max Verstappen has got the overall pace, best average pace in that Red Bull to beat the Mercedes fair and square. That said, I'm going to put Lewis Hamilton in P2 to take P2 really. And as for the podium, I'm going to say Charles Leclerc. It doesn't look like that Ferrari's got strong race pace, but he's very, very good behind the wheel. I don't suspect that the traffic below... I can't see Gasly or the AlphaTauri... I can't see Gasly or Tsunoda making a massive impression on the rest of the field. It's more of a case of holding ground for them, which will just slow the other faster cars such as Sainz, Norris and Bottas and Perez down. But I think those three are the guys who... Those three are the guys who are more likely to take the podium. It's just in that particular order, I think may very well be the best one. So that's how I see it. Verstappen P1, Hamilton P2, and Charles Leclerc in P3. So what do you think of the qualifying session that just happened? Be sure to let me know in the comment section below. And if you like the content, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified of my latest videos. So thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all for your time. I've been Spark. You guys have been brilliant. I've been seeing you all next.